Well, folks, we have some news for you today that I am pretty excited for, except for one piece, because it does look like, and I can't even say it looks like, really beginning next week, prices for Nintendo Switch, OLED accessories, and even some Switch 2 accessories are actually going to be going up.
No. Wait.
Here in the United States, Nintendo made a big announcement about this. We already heard about prices being raised on very similar stuff out in Canada not too long ago, and it's happening here as well. It's kind of crazy, the world we live in, because it feels like the older generation prices should be coming down instead of going up. I don't know if we know what the finalized prices are yet. We'll go over Nintendo's post on that. But we also have the official sales data that we've been waiting for. I'll just get the one big story out of the way. To date, the Nintendo Switch 2 has sold more than 6 million units. So,
Damn!
That's pretty crazy. We don't have the exact figures because Nintendo only said more than 6 million. However, we do have the exact figures for the month of June because they had their financial meeting. We also know how many copies of Mario Kart World sold, as well as any additional software. We at least have total software sales for Nintendo Switch 2 through the month of June. And yeah, we have other stuff we need to get to as well, including Age of Imprisonment, because Nintendo of Australia might have just gave us a massive hint that it's actually going to be launching this year and could be the big November title. And I know that feels weird because they've been saying consistently winter, and they didn't even put winter 2025 in the direct yesterday. So we're going to talk about that because all that information comes from Nintendo themselves. Like, I'm not just sitting here making this up and speculating away on some BS. No, Nintendo themselves actually might have given this hint. Well, they didn't actually. They did give the hint. It's just how we interpret that hint. So we're going to dive into that in a moment. I have to remind you, we are giving away, first off, 5 passes to PAX West. That's right. We have teamed up, me and the Nintendo by Podcast have teamed up with PAX West to give away 5 passes, 4-day passes to PAX West. A link down in the description and pinned comment will be available to enter that. I want to shout out PAX West for partnering with us for that. And on top of that, I have to get this in as well. Hey, 2 people are going to win a game of choice in August. It's about the middle of the month when we're going to be drawing that winner. So all you need to do to enter is head down to the link in the pinned comment or the description. You can pick whatever game you want. If you do win for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, Switch, or Switch 2, you do need to be 18 or older to enter. It's just going to be a standard edition game. I wish you guys luck on entering into that giveaway. And let's go ahead and dive into this first story that deals with Age of Imprisonment. So Age of Imprisonment had a new trailer yesterday, revealed a couple of new interesting things that can create some theories, but nothing too crazy, no release date or anything. But of course, there are things that happen, like this trailer gets uploaded on all of their social medias. And Nintendo's social media in Australia put an interesting thing in the description. So it's right here. Hyrule Warriors, Age of Imprisonment, A Call to Arms, Nintendo Switch 2. This is the official Nintendo Australia account. And in the description, it says this: witness the epic story of the imprisoning war unfold and experience the canonical, so they keep calling it canonical events. So this is a canon game on the Zelda timeline, which led to The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom when Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment launches on Nintendo Switch 2 this spring. And what's interesting about this spring is Australia is actually in the southern hemisphere. And if you didn't know, spring for them runs September through November. Okay, this might be starting to make some sense now. And I pointed out that this could mean that it releases in November, because after all, some people consider winter beginning in November in the Northern Hemisphere, even though it doesn't begin till like December 20th or 21st, technically. So people were like, oh, this has to be a 2026 title. Well, there's a history here where winter from Nintendo here in the Northern Hemisphere might actually mean November. And I posted this over on X as like a theory that, hey, look, maybe they mean November because it's the closest month that crosses over with spring with Australia and winter in, whatever, right? Winter in the Northern Hemisphere. Well, Nintendo's done this before. So Rick D says winter doesn't start till December 21st. Not always the case. Look at these dates of directs. So you see Pokemon Mystery Dungeon says available this winter. And then when they went and announced the actual date, it was available November 20th. So Nintendo has done this before where they have said this game's coming out this winter, and this winter meant November. November also happens to be spring for Australia. So this is all kind of lining up to show that there is a chance, at least a speculative chance, because we're just basing this off the information Nintendo's given us. Nothing else. We can't base this on anything else. They're saying this winter in North America, and in the past, they've done that, and it's meant November. And then obviously we have spring coming out from Nintendo Australia, which November happens to also be a month of spring for Australia. So again, I know we can call it a theory, but it's literally just based on Nintendo themselves. So let me know what you think about this down below. Do you think Age of Imprisonment has any shot at coming out and being the big November title? And let's go ahead and dive into a good story, a positive story, especially for physical collectors, for Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. It's getting a proper physical release on Switch 2. We saw this before, and people weren't really for sure that this was not going to be a game key card, but there was an update here saying it's official. The Eclipse has dropped a trailer confirming the full physical release of Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection on Switch and Switch 2. The Switch 2 version will be fully on Cartridge 2, which is a huge boon for physical collectors. Pre-orders are live on the Atari website, with physical versions looking to ship on the 12th of December 2025. Plus, there is indeed a collector's edition, which contains a Goro controller holder, hardcover art, a lore book, commemorative arcade tokens. It costs $149.99. It's being handled by Limited Run Games. And there you go. You can see the full collector's edition. But yeah, the big news here is that it is a physical version of a game. And someday I'm hoping that this isn't like a story we have to run where the story is that something is actually a physical release. I would like this to just be the standard, but here we are in 2025, and one of our news stories is just that a game has a physical release. I mean, the news story should be that there's a collector's edition, and we're looking at that from Limited Run Games. But the real story is that it's a physical release, because so many of the games in yesterday's Direct, pretty much all of them, are game key cards. So now we get to today. And today is August 1st, and on August 1st, Nintendo was going to have their financial meeting and reveal the real sales data for Nintendo Switch 2 for its launch month. And we have the financial results right here. And as we go down, yes, everything is up across the board besides their operating profit ratio, which, if you didn't know, it costs a lot of money to launch a system. So the profits for that are usually definitely not seen in that first quarter because they're going to be taking a hit. But they have some data in here that is quite fascinating. And this deals with the actual sales of Nintendo Switch 2. And this is where we learn that the sell-through of 3.5 million units. It said Switch 2 was launched globally on June 5th, 2025. They announced that news release of 3.5 million units in that launch weekend. But it gets better. The Switch 2 experience events, they go over this, where they had all of these and reminding investors about it. And here is that global hardware sell-through. Nintendo Switch 2 hardware global sell-through in the 7 weeks after launch. So this is basically almost the entire month of July and June put together, is more than 6 million units. They don't say how much more. They don't say it's millions more, only a few units more. They don't give exact data here, nor do they have to, because July is not a fiscal quarter they're reporting on at the moment. They just wanted to excite investors and be like, hey, we've actually to date sold more than 6 million units. Now, Nintendo Switch 2 sales grew at a strong pace following the launch, with sell-through exceeding 6 million units globally in the 7 weeks after launch. Currently, demand for Switch 2 is exceeding supply in many countries, and we regret the inconvenience this is causing our consumers. We will continue to strengthen the production and supply systems to deliver as much Nintendo Switch 2 hardware as possible. Now, I've seen this headline twisted a little bit, because if they sold 3.5 million in the first 4 days, that would mean like the ensuing 6 weeks or so, they really only sold, roughly, what is that, 2.5 million or whatever like that. I did the math on this. It's actually kind of crazy if you look at the math, because when people try to use this as saying, oh, the system has fallen off. Look, we thought it would sell 6 million just in the month of June, but we're through July and it only sold 6 million. You actually do the math, minus the 3.5 million, it actually sold roughly almost 500,000 units every single week on average worldwide. If you extrapolate that, like you just sell that many every single week for 52 weeks, that would be 26 million units in a year. I don't think that this is like the fall off that some naysayers are saying it is sales-wise. It kind of just looks like it's selling consistently well, and maybe people were a little bit over-ambitious that Nintendo would even have that amount of units made in the month of June, because as it says here, there are places that they're struggling to even keep the Switch 2 in stock. So, yeah, this is not something that Nintendo is just sitting on these millions of units and they're not selling. They're still struggling to keep it in stock in some territories, and they openly admit that here. And as we go down, you can see the hard-through sell-through with annual players. For the first time ever, it actually went down 1 million. This, happens. They're launching a new generation, right? You're not going to maintain the entire Switch audience doing that, and the rate of replacement's not necessarily going to outpace the rate of people just not playing their Switch anymore. And then you see the sales status for the hardware and software sell-in. And here's where you can see the Nintendo Switch 2 sold 5.82 million units. This is just for the month of June. So they did sell nearly 6 million in that month. And this is where people really start to extrapolate. Well, if they only sold an additional 180,000 units in the month of July. Well, see, this is where the data is really weird, because they sold 150,000. So 150,000 units they sold literally on launch in what was it, in Japan. So I think they're counting the full week of June. So when you count the full week of June and you actually look at a calendar, this is what happens. If you actually look at a calendar, there'll be 4 weeks in June, and then you would get 3 weeks in July, which gets you through the Donkey Kong Bonanza launch, which means there's a full 2 weeks in July of data not counted. And we don't even know how much past 6 million units it is, because Nintendo doesn't need to actually provide that information. We don't know. 6 million isn't all it sold. They said north of 6 million. They just wanted to throw a number out there to excite investors and let you know that, hey, in 7 weeks, bare minimum, we broke all the sales records. That being said, we don't actually know. So this is incomplete sales data, and I know we can only work with what Nintendo has provided. And so I understand the concern that, oh my gosh, it only sold 180,000 over 3 weeks in July. That's not even possible. We already know it sold more than that in Japan alone. We have the Famitsu sales data, the retail sales data. Japan alone, just combining the first 2 weeks of July, outsold that, let alone the first 3 weeks of July. So yeah, it's more than 6 million. Could be 7 or 8 million. We don't really know, because Nintendo doesn't need to provide that data right now. So I just want to keep the perspective here that when people try to negatively talk the sales data for Switch 2, oh, it barely sold any in July. It's like, okay, look, guys, we already know it exceeded that with Japan sales alone. Japan sales alone, not counting the rest of the world. Let's be realistic here. Nintendo isn't giving us the full data. You'd be like, well, if it sold 7 million or 8 million, they would have said that. Or maybe they wouldn't have said that, because the sales data isn't all final for July yet, right? Wait for the next fiscal quarter report. If it looks like it went from that 6 million number, and at the end of a full 3 months there, it only moved up to like 8 million, then we could have a conversation a little bit how maybe sales have slowed down. But even then, that wouldn't be too terrible for summer months. Anyways, getting back into this, we see that Mario Kart World comprised 5.63 million units. And the interesting part here is that roughly only 3 million, 3.5 million units of software sold that were not Mario Kart World, which this is a little shocking. I wouldn't call it, groundbreaking, and it's certainly more than made up for the drop off, from Switch, where it lost 20.4%. You see, it went from 30.64 then the 24.4. But if you add this in, sales would actually be up. Of course, it's a new platform, so yeah, I think this is quite interesting. Obviously, we see that Mario Kart World has a pretty significant install base. It's only going to keep growing, but yeah. We got to be pretty happy here. And even if you look at the quarterly sales here, that 5.82, that was just the launch month, outsold the entire quarter 3 of fiscal year 2025. So it even outsold holiday last year for Switch. So we got to keep this in perspective. Switch 2 is off to an incredible start. Now, setting all of that aside, we do have to get to the negative story, and we can't ignore this. We got to cover the bad news with the good news. And that is that Nintendo, on the day that they're announcing all these amazing sales and things look great, they got to rain on our parade and let us know, hey, we got to raise prices. So Nintendo Switch pricing update. This is official right off their website. Pricing for the original Switch family of systems and products will change in the United States based on market conditions. Effective August 3rd, 2025, these include Nintendo Switch OLED model, Nintendo Switch Lite, and Nintendo Switch accessories. Other products, including certain Switch 2 accessories, select Amiibo, and the Nintendo Sound Clock Alarmal will also see adjustments. Pricing for the Switch 2 system, physical and digital Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 games, as well as Switch Online memberships, will remain unchanged at this time. However, please note that price adjustments may be necessary in the future. For information on pricing, consumers can be found at the store. So let's open the store and take a look at this. So let's see if they have the new hardware price listed yet. Let's see here. We still have the Switch 2s all at the top. That didn't change in price. Looks like these are all the same price right now. I want to see what the Switch price is if they actually updated it, because I'm not sure it's going to show this yet because the prices don't begin until August 3rd, unfortunately. So at the time of this post, yeah, they're still listed at $299. We don't actually know what the price increases are going to be. So that's just a really unfortunate reality that we're currently living in, that the prices are just unknown. That said, we have to keep in mind, obviously, that there has been an ever-changing environment going on out there. And I don't know, I don't want to say smart enough, but I'm not informed enough to understand the logistics here. A lot of people are going to assume this is just related to the tariffs. They did settle, I think, at 20% in Vietnam, which isn't as high as people feared, but also was higher than the 10% before, which 10% was technically a little bit higher than what the tariffs used to be there. And well, it looks like the tariffs in China have kind of settled in at a much lower number. That lower number is still higher than what the tariffs used to be. So I am just going to sit here and go, I don't really understand any of this. I don't really care that much about the Switch pricing per se. I think it sucks that we're like in year 9 and the price is going up when prices should be coming down. You would figure at least the price of production should have lowered to a point that it would balance out the tariff situation, and then you could just whatever. And Nintendo could obviously eat profit losses and stuff. Yeah, they're not raising the price of Switch or anything, or like Switch 2, but like the Switch OLED, is that going to suddenly be like $400? Are they really going to charge that? I have this alternate theory about raising the prices of Switch as well. And maybe this is just like a little cynicism coming from me, but what if they're raising the price of Switch to convince you to be like, oh, look at the price of Switch, look at the price of Switch 2, you might as well buy a Switch 2. I got to throw that out there as like, I don't think this is it, because they're also raising the price of accessories, and they're also raising the price of some of the Switch 2 accessories as well. So because there's like prices that are also affecting Switch 2 in a way, I kind of don't think that that's really what the reasoning is, but I have to throw it out there that some people are probably going to think that. The real reasoning is probably all economic related. You know, as Nintendo said officially, when you look at their statement here, they talk about market conditions, and obviously we have no idea what that means. It's a kind of a generalized term. I don't think Nintendo's ever going to break this down outside of in an investors meeting. Now, I'm not sure if there was a Q&A with today's investors meeting. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anything online, so there might not have been. But if there is, and one gets published later, we'll be sure to let you know, because I'm sure these pricing updates were probably asked about investors about why prices are going up, and maybe there's a more thorough answer to the investors. And obviously, you know, asking them about the momentum of Switch 2 or anything else, or the software lineup, anything that got asked by investors. If there was a Q&A, again, we'll cover when those details become available. That being said, folks, let me know what you think about all this news, including the very unfortunate news that prices are going up for a 9-year-old platform. This feels, man, it feels weird. We live in this crazy world, and I'd say I'm shocked if prices for everything else in my life haven't gone up. Like, even after all these like tariffs came down and like settled in or whatever, when people were blaming all the tariffs, the prices haven't really come down on anything. I guess maybe egg prices have stabilized a bit, but that was more of that was an in-country issue rather than a external issue. So I don't know. I'm going to sit back and just see what happens with this price stuff. And obviously for me, I already own a Switch 1, so it's not like this really affects me, and I'm not really buying Switch 1 accessories. So personally, the price change doesn't affect me, and they're not changing the price of Switch 2 games or anything. So it's kind of weird. It's like a story that doesn't really impact me, but could impact potential new consumers that are still buying Switch 1s. I will say, if you're a new consumer looking for Switch 1s, try to look for refurbished, cheaper ones. At this point, there's enough of those out there. You shouldn't really probably buy brand new, but People like the warranties. They like the fact that it's brand new and never been touched by anybody else. I get it. But it's 2025. You know, I'm not going to tell you to buy a Switch 2. It's your money. But I'm curious what the Switch Lite comes up to, because that was a budget system. Is it not going to feel so budget anymore? I guess we'll see. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And when we get those price updates, we'll obviously let you know. For sure, we'll have them on August 3rd, because it says here that is when the prices are going up. So at least on August 3rd, we'll know the prices. So in a couple of days. So Sunday, we'll be able to let you know. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next video.